Alrighty, well, you know, Dirk, one of the endlessly fascinating things for me, it is, and it really is, legitimately, about this industry, this great quality industry of ours, is how many different disciplines really go into it. Knowledge systems disciplines. You know, you have engineering, obviously, statistical analysis, metrology, management, psychology, sociology, a lot more. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into managing for quality, and all those things are part and parcel of our great and wonderful industry. And there's another one. Philosophy. Not one that normally you would really think too clearly about, but philosophy's in there too. We actually read an article from Harish Jose in Tuesday's issue of Quality Digest that demonstrates the intersection of quality and philosophy, titled Popper's Circle. This piece introduced me to a strategic thinker and problem solver par excellence, the late Karl Popper, who's one of the great philosophers of the 20th century. I'd never heard of Karl Popper. He was an educator, philosopher, did a lot of writing. And in fact, Jose uses as his jumping off point Popper's book, All Life is Problem Solving. I love that title, All Life is Problem Solving, which is actually a collection of Popper's essays on that and many other issues, problem solving primarily among them. Well, the question that Jose asks via Popper is kind of the chicken and egg, or I don't know, maybe it's more the tree falls in an empty forest kind, which is namely, what comes first, the act of observing a problem that you want to solve or the problem itself? It's kind of an interesting little discussion there and a little perspective. Now, according to Popper, the traditional act of scientific discovery begins with sensory perception, in other words, observation. But Popper rightly asks, well, how can one properly observe a problem when one doesn't know what to look for, right? And in the article, Jose draws the natural comparison between Popper's sense of scientific observation as a cause and effect of problem solving and perception with Taiichi Ohno's famous circle.
The Ohno circle.
The Ohno circle. That's why he named it the Popper circle. Popper circle. I was like, I didn't get that until I read through the article once. Like, oh, I see now. Taiichi Ohno's circle and Karl Popper's circle, very good. Now, of course, if you're not familiar with it, the Ohno circle is an exercise in which Ohno, who was one of the primary founders and inventors of the Toyota production system, he draws a circle on the factory floor. And as I understand it, this wasn't a real big circle. This was like maybe like a 3-foot circle, right? You draw a circle on the factory floor and you have usually a young Toyota engineer, stand in it for a period of time, like 8 hours, simply to observe the processes that were going on and then kind of notice and observe any flaws or inefficiencies. So draw the circle on the floor of the factory floor of the assembly line, and this person would just stand and watch and observe what's going on. Now, in one sense, these are two very different perspectives. Popper considers the proper role, again, of observation as a problem in search of confirmation, or even better, what he refers to as falsification, which is key here. That's the process by which one should spend more time disproving a theory than on proving it, which is very much in the scientific method. Really, you want to the value is in disproving theories rather than proving theories. That's kind of an interesting distinction there. Ohno, on the other hand, comes at it from kind of a purely observational point of view with hopefully no bias or preconceived notions, what we would call beginner's mind. We've covered that on the show before. You go into it and you don't know anything. You just look and you just observe and you take it in and you figure it out later. Jose's take on it, which I happen to agree with, is that the viewpoints of Popper and Ohno are not nearly as much oppositional as they might first appear. I mean, to improve any complex system, such as the various inputs and outputs that make up a high-tech factory, a lot of inputs and outputs there, one needs to both seek out specific problems and observe with beginner's mind. In other words, you have to go into an observation looking for something in particular that you're seeking to improve, but then you need to have an open mind as to what you're seeing. A certain amount of preconception is probably necessary, but you can't allow that to affect what you're seeing in real time and what the data is telling you too. In other words, you have to combine both those things. You have to really say, okay, we've got an issue, as Popper would indicate. We got an issue, but when you are looking at the issue, don't just look at that issue. If you're going to be there and looking at the process as it's flowing, think about everything, all the inputs and outputs that are going into that with beginner's mind. So it's like the preconception is that we're having an issue, but you're not having a preconception as to what the solution for that issue may be. It's kind of a fine distinction between Popper's approach and Ohno's approach, but I think they can be unified, and I think that Jose would say that too. And in a certain sense, this is kind of a false comparative, and I'm kind of oversimplifying it a lot. But it's really analogous to what Ono put his engineers through, this idea of the circle on the floor, what Popper was saying in Ono's agreement. Really, again, Popper's really about the problems and solving them, while Ono's really about pure observation, which has inherent value in helping people sharpen their powers of perception, which is valuable in and of itself. But again, as with most things, the power isn't in the blacks and the whites, but it's in the grays. I mean, you can blend Popper's considerations of problems first with Ono's observation for the sake of observation, and that makes a pretty potent quality improvement mindset, I think. And some things, of course, are about root causes and corrective actions, and some things are about learning to see. Understanding which is which and how to best approach your particular situation, I think, is really the art of quality as we could consider it. So learning to see is important, and that's what Ono's really talking about, but also having a specific idea in mind of what you want to see without it shading what you discover is the art of quality. So
unpack this.
It's a complicated one.
But if you could kind of synopsize the Popper's idea and Ono's idea again in just a couple sentences, how would you put that?
Popper's idea is the scientific method of you don't want to have to prove anything. You want to disprove things if you can. So you want to falsify things if you can. So you're going to go into an observation with a very specific idea in mind of to what you're expecting and go from there. Ono's is very much of just pure observation. You're sitting in the circle. You're seeing for the sake of seeing, and those two things blended. My idea, I think Joe's idea too. They overlap a little, but having both those ideas in mind, they're kind of different ideas. But if you hold them in your mind at the same time, go into an observation with the idea that you have an issue that you want to try to solve. But once you're observing it, have beginner's mind and don't be presupposed as to what the answer to that problem may be. I think is it's very hard to do that, but I think that if you look at those two maybe somewhat oppositional things, I think you can bring them together into unity and achieve some good quality.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a complicated article. It's a complicated article, short article, only about 800 words, but a lot of information in that one from Harvey Shows. Good piece.